Welcome to the Deeper Thinking podcast. I'm Holly, your narrator, blending intellectual insight with a touch of digital precision to guide you through today's exploration. Our focus is homelessness, particularly reforms in the UK. Yet this is not a uniquely British issue. The challenges we discuss resonate across many Western nations. From policy gaps to systemic inequities, we'll explore the shared struggles and opportunities for change in addressing one of society's most pressing concerns. Let's dive in. Homelessness is a subject that commands attention not just for its visible impact, but for the profound truths it reveals about our society. It is not simply the absence of a roof over one's head, it is the absence of opportunity, stability, and dignity. Every rough sleeper, every displaced family tells a story of systemic failure and deliberate policy priorities, shaped by the choices of those in power and the complacency of those who elect them. This is not solely a political issue, it is a societal one. As the electorate, we hold the responsibility to make homelessness a priority, not just at the point of individual or family housing instability, but at the broader level of economic and social reimagining. We must ask ourselves, what kind of society do we want to build? One where inequality is normalized, or one where housing and dignity are fundamental rights? Homelessness also carries with it the centuries-old dilemma of how society spends its money on the deserving or undeserving poor. This false binary assumes blame can be neatly attributed, as though human lives can be divided into metrics and KPIs to weigh global financial markets against the lingering effects of childhood trauma on decision-making. Such an approach dehumanizes the issue, reducing people to data points while absolving systemic failures of accountability. For me, this issue is personal, rooted in years of direct experience with homelessness and a deep understanding of the forces at play. But its urgency is universal. Homelessness lays bare the moral and structural failings of unchecked markets and short-sighted policies that prioritize profit over people. It commodifies a basic human need, entrenching inequity by design. These are not accidents. They are deliberate choices that reveal uncomfortable truths about what we as a society truly value. Homelessness transcends housing. It forces us to rethink interconnected issues like health, education, and economic opportunity. It holds a mirror to the priorities we embrace and the ones we neglect. Solving homelessness is not about quick fixes or temporary solutions. It's about reshaping justice, equity, and belonging. This is not merely a crisis to resolve. It is a transformative opportunity to demand better for individuals, for communities, and for the society we hope to create. Homelessness isn't just the absence of a roof, it's the absence of stability, dignity, and health. Recent figures expose a harrowing truth. 354,000 people in England are officially homeless. Among them, primary school children bear the heaviest burden, their lives uprooted and their futures cast into uncertainty. Imagine a classroom where 1 in every 24 students doesn't have a permanent home. In London's poorest boroughs, the numbers rise sharply. This is not merely a statistic. It's a national failure. The streets tell their own story. Rough sleepers endure brutal winters, their vulnerability magnified with each passing night. Council funding to prevent homelessness has increased, but the safety net is fraying. Charities face shrinking budgets, and a looming national insurance hike threatens to deepen the crisis. The outlook grows grimmer, not brighter. Homelessness isn't just about housing, it's about health, opportunity, and the scars of insecurity. Chronic instability disrupts education, stunts aspirations, and widens the chasm of inequality. This is more than a crisis of policy, it's a crisis of humanity. The Renters' Rights Bill arrives as a long-overdue acknowledgement of the harm caused by a deregulated housing market. No-fault evictions are finally being outlawed, a step that campaigners have fought tirelessly to achieve. Yet the bill falls short. Without limits on in-tenancy rent increases, landlords are left with a loophole that threatens to undo any progress. What stops a landlord from pricing tenants out when profit beckons? The absence of stronger measures risks turning reform into a mirage. Shelter trade unions and progressive MPs are pushing for amendments that could close these gaps. Paula Barker's proposals to limit rent rises and strengthen the National Register of Landlords represent crucial steps forward. These changes would shift the balance of power, offering tenants a real chance at security. But the question remains, will Parliament listen? As it stands, this bill is progress tempered by hesitation. A missed opportunity would weigh heavily on those who need this reform the most. The government's ambitious plans for house building seem promising on the surface, but cracks quickly appear upon closer inspection. Initial targets are likely to be missed, thanks in part to a workforce shortage that ministers have yet to address with the urgency it demands. Meanwhile, developers continue to prioritise luxury properties, sidelining the affordable homes that lower-income families so desperately need. This isn't just a housing strategy. It's a reflection of a distorted set of priorities. For those without inherited wealth, the dream of home ownership drifts further out of reach. The social housing sector, a lifeline for many, faces neglect while high-profit developments thrive. The irony is glaring. Homes meant to signify progress are becoming symbols of exclusion. Unless the government confronts this imbalance, homelessness will remain entrenched, its roots nourished by systemic inequities. What is being built today may speak less of opportunity and more of indifference. Homelessness is more than a social failure. It's a profound health crisis. The connection between housing and well-being is as undeniable as it is underexplored. Chronic instability doesn't just wear down the body. It takes an invisible toll on mental health, exacerbating stress, anxiety, and depression. The costs, though hard to quantify, are painfully evident in lives disrupted and futures dimmed. Housing insecurity breeds a cycle of harm that is almost impossible to escape without intervention. The truth is stark: homelessness harms. Civil society recognises this and strives to alleviate suffering where it can, but the weight of this crisis is too great for charities to bear alone. Government action is not just desirable, it is essential. Developers, landlords, and policymakers must be held accountable, their decisions guided by the needs of the most vulnerable rather than the law of profit. Without affordable homes, the problem remains insurmountable. The solution begins not with pity, but with purpose, and a system that finally values people over property. At its core, homelessness challenges more than just policy frameworks. It challenges our collective morality. The figures and statistics are shocking, but they fail to capture the full weight of the human stories behind them. Each person left without a home represents a failure to uphold the most basic standards of decency and care. How can a society thrive when so many of its members are forced to merely survive? This is not just about numbers, it's about values. Homelessness forces us to confront the uncomfortable truths of inequality and exclusion. The market-driven housing model has treated homes as commodities rather than human necessities. Policies have too often prioritized profits over people, leaving the most vulnerable to bear the brunt of systemic indifference. Reform is not enough. What's needed is a recalibration of priorities, one that places humanity, dignity, and justice at the heart of every decision. The path forward demands boldness and clarity. Incremental changes won't suffice when the roots of the problem run so deep. Developers should no longer dictate the terms of what gets built and where. Instead, they must be held accountable for delivering homes that meet actual needs, not just market demands. This requires more than just new construction. It demands a cultural shift, a recognition that housing is a right, not a privilege. A simple truth remains: the homes and communities that form the backbone of society are left with less and less. Unable to see the broader picture, they are often told that what little they have must be shared with even more people. It's a calculated tactic designed to provoke fear and spark xenophobic responses. This narrative pits neighbour against neighbour, distracting from a far greater injustice, one that goes unseen and unchallenged. What isn't discussed is the vast wealth hoarded by the hundreds of billionaires who control a disproportionate share of global resources. Their immense fortunes remain untouched, shielded from scrutiny, while everyday people are led to believe they must tighten their belts even further. The focus is kept deliberately narrow, fostering division and resentment, instead of addressing the larger systemic failures that allow such inequality to thrive. Until next time.